Now, the first system that we're going to cover is going to be the nervous system. And we're going to go over some basics. We won't get into this in a ton of detail because there's a lot more to it, but we will go talk about just kind of the basic overview of it. Now, the nervous system, the first main organ I want you to think of associated with this is going to be the brain. And the brain has lots and lots of functions in a body of an organism or one of our livestock animals. So you're going to see it impact everything from behavior to the way the body moves, to the way they take in information, the storing of memories, associations, all of those different kinds of things really come back to this idea that the nervous system is really a communication network. So it's a communication network amongst muscles and nerves and ligaments and the different parts of the brain that store memories and fight or flight responses, or even the basic function of the body, things like just breathing and the heartbeat. All of that comes back down to the brain. And the brain has two major divisions that we see, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And either of those kind of divisions kind of break down into different body parts. And so we usually say the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is the nerves. And there are three key anatomy points to the nervous system, and that's going to be the brain, as we've already talked about, which then goes to the spinal cord that we're going to see, and then that continues to move through the body in the nerves. And so the spinal cord is really going to be this big, huge bundle of nerves along usually this spinal vertebrae column connected to the brain. And then the peripheral nerves are going to be the ones that we see move to all of the extremities of the body, okay, much smaller in size. And the nervous system is a very, very complex system. The brain is one of the most complex and detailed organs that we're going to see in the body. It has very defined regions, which we'll look at in just a second. And then really the purpose of this spinal cord is to transmit the signals from the brain to the body. And it's going to do that through that enormous bundle of nerve we see moving through the spinal columns. And then it's going to continue to move information to, again, the extremities of the body. So helping muscles know how to move, helping certain things twitch, eyes blink. And so nerves are really going to be responsible for controlling both voluntary, so thought out action, and involuntary responses, or things that we just naturally do. You know, when someone blows in your face, your eyes blink. When we jump too fast around a sheep, it jumps. So just some of those things that an animal naturally will do on its own. It's huge. The pig is small. Somehow, brain size doesn't always correlate to brilliance. Just kidding, those of you that love sheep. But I want you to understand that we will see some differences in brain anatomy and size, depending on what animal species we're talking about, but there's also a lot of similarities that we'll also see as well. So brain anatomy, there are so many things that we could get into in the brain anatomy. I am not going to get that detail oriented in this class. Really, I just want you to know these three pieces to start. So the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brain stem. And so the cerebrum is going to be this beautiful chunk of brain matter, both the right and left hemispheres. And it's going to be made up of frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes. Okay, but I'm not worried that you know the lobes. I'm just more worried that you understand that whole large chunk on both sides of the brain is what we call the cerebrum. And then this beautiful piece of anatomy down here at the bottom is what we call the cerebellum. And it does things like balance, it helps deal with like voluntary muscle movement, and it helps move messages from the body to the brain. And then we have this beautiful brain stem hanging out here at the bottom. And it's really responsible for things that have to do with involuntary reflex actions, so things like blinking, swallowing, breathing, heartbeat. And that's why if we see severing of brainstem in any animal, you will basically see loss of life at that point because the body can no longer maintain its basic functions. And then if I was to take the brain and kind of cut it in half, so this is what we would call a cross section of the brain. Okay, so I cut it in half. And inside of that cerebrum are two pieces of anatomy that I want you to be familiar with. And these are actually connected to the endocrine system. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are responsible for reproductive hormones. And so we'll talk about how the hypothalamus actually helps stimulate hormone activity, and then the pituitary is what actually helps produce the secretion of hormones, and then kind of helps different endocrine glands, specifically male and female reproductive organs, to do their proper job.